Yes, dear compatriots, NINAS will today break a 3-month radio silence. We're at war. And so we came to the point in March of 2024 when we had to dress back a little, shut down all kinds of activities so that the enemy can bring out all of what it plans to do to save itself from the defeat of the 1999 Constitution that has already terminated the union erected upon it. Let those who wish to understand pause and find out whether in the face of the defeat of the 1999 Constitution they still have a union. Because if they don't, and they think they do, they are going to be the victims of their own ignorance. Having said that, we are now going to address some of the things that had happened in these 3 months. From the camp of the enemy that thought it was, advancing to some destination, some great destination. And the first of what we need to address today is what Chief Emeka Anyaoku and all of those who have been bandying around some formula for writing a new constitution for Nigeria.
In Nigeria, our founding fathers recognized the crucial importance of addressing the country's diversity, and so proceeded to negotiate and agree the 1960 and 1963 constitutions, which was a truly federal constitution. As a result, the country was more united and was progressing at a relatively greater pace of socioeconomic development until the military intervened in governance in January 1966 and eventually imposed on the country the 1999 Constitution, which, with the blatantly false claim that the Constitution was made by we, the people of Nigeria. The 1999 Constitution, even as amended, lacks the legitimacy that can only be conferred on a constitution democratically made by the people of Nigeria. We must therefore have a new legitimate constitution that will give us a different governance system that can tackle effectively the myriad challenges currently facing our country. In my view, the new constitution should involve fewer and more economically viable federating units. It should be made by a constituent assembly of persons to be democratically elected on non-political party basis. I would say of 3 persons per each of the 36 existing states and 1 person from the Federal Capital Territory. Their deliberations should take into consideration the 1960 and 1963 constitutions, as well as the recommendations of the 2014 National Conference. Thereafter, the draft constitution produced by this Constituent Assembly should be submitted to a national referendum for approval. And in this way, we would have a legitimate Nigerian citizens' constitution. in conclusion, in order for our pluralistic country, Nigeria, to survive, I call on the presidency and the national and state assemblies to hearken to the plea of the patriots and others advocating a restructuring of our present governance system. The plea for a bold step to give the country a new, democratically made Nigeria's People's Constitution. I thank you all.
Well, let's take it from how they put it. Having listened to that, you see now that Chief Emeka Anyaoku does not, it does appear, because we are unable to believe that a diplomat with the level of exposure he has does not understand even the basics. The problem we need to solve in Nigeria today can be summarized as the falsehood contained in the preamble to the Constitution of Nigeria. Those three big falsehoods that said, we the people of Nigeria, that is the constituent components of Nigeria, the nationalities that make up Nigeria, having firmly and solemnly resolved to live in unity as one indivisible and indivisible nation. Therefore, do hereby make and give unto ourselves the following constitution. Those three falsehoods, because nobody ever identified who the we the people are amongst those who locked us into this union in 1914. The British invaded the owners of the sovereignties, the ones with whose fathers they signed treaties of trading that became treaties of protection. By the time in 1914 they were going to, aggregate all those treaties into one political space, one political union, they did not go back to the owners of the sovereignty. So they avoided, they swindled them of their sovereignty by the amalgamation of 1914. From that time to this date, nobody had ever invited the Yoruba as Yoruba, the Ijo as Ijo, the Igbo as Igbo, the thief as thief, to come to discuss union. And that's what constitution is supposed to be all about. Meanwhile, we have had constitutions since the first one of 1914 by order in council, another in 1922, another in 1946, another in 1954, yet 1960 after Lancaster House. Then we came to 63, then we came to 79, then we came to 99. In all of that, the owners of the lands that are conscripted into the Union of Nigeria had never been invited to any meeting of how they could be a union. And so when Chief Emeka Anyaoku, in the midst of this raging debate about the Constitution of Nigeria, which he accepts and declared is illegitimate, the 1999 Constitution, he says, is illegitimate because of its dubious origin, and that it's not the business of the National Assembly or the government to make constitutions for us. He knew that much, and he said that much. But then he turns around to say that to suggest that we can go and make another constitution now without reference to the owners of the sovereignties that will have to be consolidated into the Union of Nigeria. We are not prepared to believe that he does not know. And what is it we are saying he seems not to know? Somebody should ask Chief Emeka Anyaoku, what is his understanding of the phrase, we the peoples of the Republic of Nigeria? Because if he thinks it's any group of people gathered in Oshodi Market, or any group of people that can assemble in the Institute of International Affairs, or wherever in Borokere, in Port Harcourt, no. It means we the Yoruba, we the Ijo, and it is only in that capacity that they can be discussing whether they want to be in union you must identify the own, because we're talking about lands and peoples that will federate, that will unionize. It is in identifying the owners of the land who are now discussing whether they want to be in union and how they will federate, which was what Bola Ige was saying for many years. At the time we were talking about, they were discussing a sovereign conference to settle those two questions, because the Nigeria of 1914, amalgamation of 1914, is not different from the Nigeria of amalgamation of 1999. The only thing, on one occasion, it was the British. On the second occasion, the military wing of the Caliphate that imposed the constitution, the document they put our signature on without reference to us. And it became basis of being in union. It became basis of our sovereignty being, taken away from us. It became basis of being in 36 states. It became basis of 68 items of exclusive list that took everything from everybody. And so, that we the people, if Chief Emeka Anyaoku understands the meaning of we the people as referring to the owners of the constituent components of Nigeria, the peoples of Nigeria, he will not then think that the constitution that is being rejected now will be replaced by another constitution that does not refer, that does not take his bearing, take his life from the peoples of Nigeria, properly so-called, because they are the ones who have to decide whether they want to be in union. The process, from what you heard in the clip, the process they are discussing is exactly the same as what Olisa Abakoba was trying to guide them to do in December of 2023 at the colloquium of Akpabio in Abuja with Tinubu present. Olisa Abakoba was telling them that standing on the fraud of 99, the constitution that we did not make, that they could draw some imaginary power from section 4, section 1 as National Assembly, that our sovereignty is now with them and the president, without reference to the Yoruba, the owners of all the lands you call Nigeria, that they could, as National Assembly, assume the sovereignty of the people, and then write out another booklet and attach as schedule. It is in that advice, it is in that warped jurisprudence, it is in that frying pan to fire proposition that all this colloquium here and there began to happen, of how they will go and write out. So Chief Emeka Anyaoku also does not understand the difference between the constitution of a federation. A federation is a union of constitutions. And when you say we write a new constitution for Nigeria, a new democratic constitution for Nigeria, whereas Nigeria can only be one country as a federation. And a federation is a union of sovereignties, meaning a union of constitutions. Think back at the journey to Lancaster House. Was there not constitution of the Western region that came before that of the East, and then the North in 1959? Was it not those three constitutions that went to unionize themselves in Lancaster House? Even a primary school child should understand that a federation is only a federation, a union of constitutions. And so, if we're talking about writing a new constitution democratically, that is ignorance, to put it mildly. But we think it is more than ignorance, because of the caliber. Somebody who has been in the diplomatic community in statecraft all his life, I do not believe that Chief Emeka Anyaoku does not understand that the Federation of Nigeria cannot operate one constitution and still be a federation. And so, we the people means we the nationalities. You cannot assemble any other group, there's no other assemblage, constituent assembly of what? If you do not identify them, and in identifying them, it must be something that is documented all the way to referendum. For them to commit to wanting to discuss union. Because you come to the second leg of that preamble that says, having firmly and solemnly resolved to live together. We are pointing out to you what went wrong, which we are trying to resolve, and which, if we don't resolve, the union is at an end as we speak. The union is already at an end, because the signature, the authorization for the 1999 constitution is that falsehood that we submitted our sovereignty. Anybody who does not understand that will be a victim of that ignorance, because it's the type that kills. And so we're saying that there must be an identity. Anything that will become constitution in replacement of the 1999 constitution that had been defeated must take its bearings from identifying who the way the people are and allowing them, bringing about a process by which they go and sit down clear-minded that they are going to discuss whether they want to be in union and if they will be, on what terms. Because that's where you now begin to talk about the formations they want to relate in. Is it 10 regions or 50 states or whatever? It has to be their decision. The Urobo must decide whether they want to be with the Edo and the Ejo or not in all of that. And so we are saying that it is in that misapprehension of the difference between we the people, that is the people and the peoples. The people of Nigeria, a foreigner can come say, Mr. President, I rejoice with Mr. President and the people of Nigeria, because Nigeria is already settled in the minds of that foreigner. So we are the same people. But when we are discussing constitution, that is why you hear the word peoples. And if anybody should know the difference between the people and the peoples of Nigeria and the people of Nigeria, it must be Chief Anyaoku, the diplomat of all life. And so it is when you have settled the first question of who the people are, that you go to the question of whether they have solemnly resolved to live in unity forever. That means they must sit down and discuss their sovereignty, whether they want to be alone as countries of their own, or they want to be in a confederation or loose federation, whatever. It has to be their decision. Nobody can come to impose it on them, like the British did in 1914, like Absalama Abaka did in 1999, or the one Murtala Mohammed did in 1975 that became 1979 constitution. That's what we're trying to recover from. And we don't need any meeting, since our signature that have been incited illicitly in the 1999 edition have been defeated by our coming to disown it. That's where we are now. We have no union. So those who are thinking that Nigeria is sitting there and they only need to write a new constitution, a new democratic constitution, for which Nigeria? Where's that Nigeria? Are we daft not to realize that there's no Nigeria now in the face of the fraud of 1999, which has been exposed adequately? And so the third item in that preamble of 3 lies is that we hereby made, enact, and give unto ourselves the following constitution. So that it is in resolving the question of we the people that were never identified, we the people that never met to agree to be in union, and we the people that never wrote any, distilled any constitution contrary to the claims of that preamble. That's what we are doing now. That's what NINAS has mobilized, organized across the last 25 years, from 1999 to now. That's what we say must be resolved, or the union will go into dissolution. Let nobody imagine that there must be a meeting. It's like a marriage that has failed. If you put my signature on a document I had nothing to do with, and that is your basis of holding on to my sovereignty, holding on to my economic assets, carving me up into 36 states in which I'm now a voiceless minority, and you sit in Abuja thinking you have a country, you must be out of your mind. And so the question of not making a distinction between people and peoples, and if Chief Anyaoku and the school travelers will not come to where they can, the Ninas that can explain it quietly to them, they can at least go to Professor Anthony Akinwale, who made that distinction succinctly, where he was talking about Nigeria that must make U-turn. He made that distinction in a manner that convinces us that he can explain it to whoever wants to be explained to.
Quite often when we speak about Nigeria, we collapse the distinction between country, state, and nation. We tend to think that the three mean the same. We tend to think the three are synonyms. A country is a territory. from the Latin contra terra, the land that lies ahead of you. A country is a territory. It is not necessarily a nation. A nation is an association of peoples, and I use that word in the plural deliberately because of diversity. A nation is an association of peoples who identify their shared core values. And on the basis of their shared core values, they give themselves a constitution which will now establish institutions that make up the state. What we have in Nigeria and in most African countries is a confusion where we think the nation is the state. The nation is reduced to the state. We have a country quite all right by the fact that we live within a territory, even if that territory is not secure, as we all know. But we don't have a nation. Until we build a nation, we can't even talk of unfinished greatness. And I have to make a critique of the title of Governor Fayemi's book. It presupposes that there is a project that is unfinished. I am saying we have not even started the project.
Oh my God.
And we need to stop deluding ourselves. And it is when we begin to identify our shared core values that we begin to build a nation. What we have right now is a state held together at gunpoint. And when the state begins to oppress the citizen, there will be cries of marginalization, there will be secessionist and separatist agitation, there will be insecurity. Now we have set up Nigeria to be a place where the state is more powerful than the citizen, and the state is oppressive. We need to retrace our steps. Quite often, Nigerians ask, which is the way forward? And I say, if you are moving in the wrong direction, you shouldn't be going forward. You should make a U-turn.
And then the question of one constitution that has to be made now, no. It is the constitutions of the federating units that will have to emerge first. Anybody who is talking about what to do with Nigeria now, who does not identify the owners of the land that own the sovereignties and the right to self-determination, both inalienable. The sovereignty is inalienable. They only need to, it only needs, Yoruba, for instance, only need to be Yoruba in Yoruba land. Just like the Scots in Scotland, the Catalans in Catalonia, the Ijaw in Ijaw land. That's all you need to be the owner of your sovereignty. Therefore, to be the exclusive custodian of your right to self-determination. Nigeria had been done, the Nigeria of now, the Nigeria that came since 1914 was done in negation, was imposed in confiscation and negation of our sovereignties and our right to self-determination. And that is what we are resolving now. And because those two are inalienable, we do not require anybody's approval or permission, including the illicit federal government still in Abuja or anybody at all. Yoruba doesn't require anybody's approval to live in Yoruba land by themselves. If you want to be in Union of Nigeria, you must then persuade them. Doubt me, go to the UN instrument on the question. The UN may have lost its mind for a moment, but there are instruments that determine how those things are settled. And so that is where we want to come from, to now saying, if anybody is still in doubt of how do you call contradictions of describing or discussing one constitution for a federation. Chief Emeka Anyaoku says that the representation in the place of making that constitution, the Constituent Assembly was recommended, he says it should be on the basis of 5 delegates per state. We have 36 states that have been imposed by decree that has turned our lives upside down. 5 delegates per state means that they will be building on the structure of 36 states. That's already a matter of deep controversy that we are not prepared to accept, no matter what they do, because those states were created by decree with no consultation. Why is it that Nigeria joined Britain in refusing since 1914 to discuss with the owners, the constituent peoples of Nigeria. If the Ijaw had to be in union with anybody, if the Igbo had to be in union with anybody, if the Tiv had to be in union with anybody, if the Yoruba had to be in union with anybody, what is the difficulty in setting up a process that will identify them to be the we the people, that will allow them to discuss so that they can say they have agreed to be in union, and then allow them to codify their discussion after they've gone through all the process? That is what NINAS has placed on the table, a plan to do that today. Because if we are not doing that, I tell you, we are marching to end of union in practical terms. People are going to take their portions from that fraud of 1999 and whatever they need to defend themselves in the place. Remember, it is that constitution that holds on to their sovereignty. It's that constitution that took all the economic assets, whether it is oil and gas in Niger Delta, or the ports in the coastal areas, or the solid minerals of the rest of the country, like the limestone of Benue that was allotted to Dangote to own and be Africa's richest man. All of that. And so the question of 5 delegates per state already negates all the motive for correcting the mischief of being conscripted into a union. We do not accept the 36 states that were created by decree. That's the bottom line. If you are not prepared to identify the owners of the lands, the peoples that are to be federated into the Union of Nigeria, and you want to build from the 36 states that already excluded them. The 36 states were not done in any kind of consensus, in any kind of discussion with the owners of the sovereignties. They were done by decree with reference to nobody. There may be befuddled minds that were campaigning for states, like the ones who now won 42 states, the one who are saying that we're going to create for you 42 states. Do you build a house from the roof? Do you build a house from the roof? Why can't it be the discussion of the owners of the lands, the identifiable ethnic constituent components, that will now decide that they will live in so formation? What is the difficulty in allowing them to be the one to decide? Why do you decide it for them? When we went to Pronaco, when we called the Pronaco meeting, it was to get the nationalities to decide these 3 questions: whether they want to continue in union imposed on them since 1914, and if yes, on what terms. For 2 years they were discussing, and we came out with a draft that could have taken Nigeria back to being a federation. But look at what happened to it. So finally, on Chief Emeka Anyaoku and his proposition, he says a referendum would then be conducted after the Constituent Assembly had done its business. A referendum? By who? How will Ogoni fare in that referendum if the whole of Nigeria is voting? INEC will be the one to conduct that referendum, and we have seen the kind of business that can be done by INEC. The referendums required will be in 2 stages. The Yoruba must decide today, the Ijaw must decide today whether they want to continue in your union. That's the 2-stage procedure that NINAS has in his 5-point proposition. Let those who have not read that NINAS, that constitutional force majeure, go and read it. The 5-point proposition is so clear on these issues of what exactly is the problem that needs to be solved. What exactly is the solution that will work? When will that solution be applied? How will that solution be applied? And who will do what? The NINAS 5-point proposition is the only proposition on the table that has answers to these 5 big questions. None other. And so we say the referendum cannot be, it must be referendums, and in those 2 stages. So please, whoever finds Chief Emeka Anyaoku whoever can call his attention to this, sit down with them and ask him whether he has answers to this question, because we could have ignored them, but a lot of people might think, yes, he certainly knows, and therefore we are saying that these 5 things we have listed are things he seems not to know, but we do not believe he does not know. Our suspicion, the prevailing view amongst those who are listening to him with disbelief, is that he appears to still be in the business of upholding the preferences of the British in our space. Those who want to know more about that should get on YouTube and research the title we called Nigeria, the Pyramid of Evil, which was where we identified the role of the British in what is happening to us, the role of the Caliphate, their joint venture partner, and the role of the Alliance of 1967. Make a map of Nigeria, put all the actors on that map, go back to that Pyramid of Evil, and you will see who and who is working together for what purpose. Our suspicion is that it is not ignorance that is playing, it is a motive, clear-minded motive to keep things the way the British, the Caliphate, and the Alliance of 1967 wants it. We stop there.